Hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. JD here with the Business Straight Up with Scotch Ramen podcast. And we have our wonderful guest, Laura Incognito, with Little Tucker. If you haven't heard of Little Tucker, you guys created these amazing little energy bites that are vegetarian? Vegan energy bites. And they're sold all throughout Calgary currently, and you guys are expanding, which we'll get into in a little bit. Cool. But welcome, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
She's got this amazing Australian accent, which is going to throw me right off. So don't be
It's surprised. Like half Canadian, half Australian. Honestly, I don't know what it is anymore.
Yeah, it's just a big shit mix.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess we'll start off, if you can just share kind of what your background is and how you got into Little Tucker, that would be wicked.
Sure. It was a complete accident.
Yeah.
So I'm Australian. I left when I was 21, so in 2013, with a master's degree in broadcast journalism. So I had basically worked my ass off for 5 years to get to the point where I was at. Was offered an amazing dream job that I was very excited about. But just before I took that job, I kind of turned around and said, I'm just going to go on this like 3-month trip with my girlfriends around the States, and when I come back, like, I'm all yours. Yeah. And luckily they were like, yeah, go for it. We'll see you when you get back. And honestly, on that trip, I think there was something like always deep down in me that knew that like journalism was not for me. I was really good at it, but I was not by any means passionate about it. And yeah, it wasn't for me, and I think deep down I knew that, and as soon as I left Australia and went on this trip, that just totally came to the surface. And pretty soon into that trip, I met somebody, which kind of just solidified the fact that I like wasn't going home, which was the hardest phone call I've ever made to my mom in my life. It was honestly just awful. So then I decided after that 3-month trip that I was moving up to Canada. I did the typical Australian thing and did a ski season in Whistler, which I loved. Yeah. And then I lived in BC for probably like 9 months total. Fell in love with BC. Like I was just, completely in love with it. Was dragged to Calgary for the relationship, which was in the summer of 2014. And I think I was just at this time of life where like, okay, I decided that I didn't want to do the whole journalism thing, and I was now in Calgary, which was like, I had never heard of it before, and I was just in this time of life where I was just like stuck, and I had like no idea what I was doing. So coming to Calgary, I basically tried to get a job. I had an interview for a job in broadcast, and I was told that my accent was too strong and that I would never be able to work in radio here. Right. And believe it or not, 5 years ago, my accent was about 10 times as strong, so it's believable. So then I was kind of like, all right, like, what am I gonna do? I was serving downtown. It was like a breakfast spot that was all oil and gas sales guys, and I just hated it. Like, I hated it, and I just really thought that that's what Calgary was about, and this just like wasn't my place. And the first 6 months, I like really, really struggled. Yeah. Until I got to a point where I was like, I either need to find something that's going to keep me here, or my bags are packed and I need to get out. Yeah. So my partner that I was with had always been an entrepreneur and like had a huge passion for starting businesses, and just basically said to me one day, like, you should start a business. And I was like, great, I can do that.
Doing what?
Yeah. And so I literally, like, I remember we were brainstorming one night, we sat down, and for me, food was like the thing that made sense to me. I grew up in like a big Italian family. Like every spare second I have, I'm like in the kitchen. It's my happy place. It's where I go to like de-stress, and I just absolutely love creating recipes. And my dad is like in his garden 24/7, or like at the farmer's market. My mom is just like the most incredible cook, and like it's just like in my blood. Yeah. So when I was brainstorming what I could start a business for, it was like food. Okay, I'm gonna do something related to food. And then another big passion of mine is just like living a really healthy plant-based lifestyle. So I had those two things going for me. My boyfriend at the time was like, okay, cool, food, like let's do something with that. His mom has an awesome like relish recipe. Yeah. He's like, you should make like relish, like that's what you're gonna do with your life. And I was like, you know what, the relish is really good, but I have a feeling that like I can do something a little bit more than that. Yeah. And then on top of that, I was just kind of like, Australia is such a health-focused, vegan-forward place that I really missed the like the food that was available to me back there. And when I moved to Calgary, I really struggled to be able to find anything that I actually wanted to eat. 5 years ago in Calgary, people had no idea what the word vegan meant.
Right.
So it was really tough. So I was looking at all these food trends that were going on back home and like what I liked eating, what I couldn't get here anymore. And it basically came down to, I would go to the grocery store to buy like a granola bar for a snack, and I would go down the granola bar aisle and read all of the ingredients. And you know what it's like there's hundreds of options. I would read all the ingredients and there was literally nothing there that like spoke to me. There was nothing there that I wanted to put into my own body. All of these brands were like claiming to be a really healthy option, but like when you read the ingredient list, it's like it's not. And it really frustrated me the way that these big brands could like market themselves in a way to basically like lie to consumers.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna start this company that's based all around creating snacks that are just like made from real ingredients, and I wanted them to be vegan. Honestly, it was selfish. I made food for like what I like eating. Yeah. So it was all vegan, it was all gluten-free, it was all dairy-free. The only sweetener that I wanted to use was dates, so there's no added sugars or anything like that in them. And then I really wanted to incorporate like exotic superfoods into them, because that was something that no one else on the market was doing. So yeah, I honestly thought it would be like a hobby that I did on the side while I like figured out what I was doing with my life. So I started selling at farmers markets, and not the like big Calgary farmers markets, the like small community farmers markets. Yeah, which were just like so much whack. But yeah, I would like make this stuff in my kitchen at home, which drove my boyfriend crazy because my crap was just like everywhere. And I would spend every single day, like hours and hours, creating these recipes and going to the farmers markets 3 times a week. And my very first farmers market, it was like literally in the north, in the middle of nowhere, in like a parking lot of like a Canadian Tire. It was not legit at all.
Yeah, real community focused,
yeah,
tiny.
Yeah, and I made what I thought would get me through the like 5-hour market, and I think I sold out in the first like 30 minutes.
Okay.
So this like light bulb went off. And I was like, I feel like I have something that people want, and like maybe I can take this further. And I had people like come back week after week, just being like, we have never been able to find anything like this, and they like loved it so much. And so, in a very long-winded story, that's how it was created.
That's how it started. So how did you get the name Little Tucker? Like where did that come from?
So Tucker in Australia is a slang word that basically, it was traditionally used to mean food that the Aboriginal people would basically scour from the land. So things like nuts and berries and seeds. And now it's used more casually just to kind of describe like food.
Okay.
But that was the premise behind the company, in that everything we make is ingredients from the earth, and it's all completely unrefined. So that's where Tucker comes from.
Tucker came from?
Yeah.
Cool. So when, I mean, at least what I know about consumer packaged goods and food products, there's quite a few hurdles you have to jump. What was that like at the beginning? What did it take for you to go from farmer's market to then being able to sell in retail establishments and so on? Like, what was that kind of journey like?
From the very beginning, I said to myself, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give it everything I have for 6 months. I was fortunate enough to be in a position where I didn't have to have a side job. So basically when I decided to do this, it was kind of like I quit my job, and like this was everything I had. So I did those farmers markets for the first 3 months, and then after kind of realizing like I want to take this further, it was then contacting yoga studios, fitness studios, spin studios, which was great. And then from there, it was, I mean, probably like a year in, it was like, I either like go big or go home.
Yeah.
So that's when I started contacting like organic grocery stores in Calgary, like Blush Lane and Community. And there was just such a huge, overwhelming response from customers that honestly, like it was just such a like organic growth. Like I feel like I've never had to like uncomfortably push anything that I've done. It's honestly just kind of like unfolded. I think that comes down a lot to timing and good luck. Like, I was one of the first people in Calgary that was doing something like this. 5 years later, if I tried to now, there's so much out there that it would definitely be tougher, but I think it comes down a lot to my timing. And I was in the community as much as I physically could be. Like,
right.
That was super important to me. Like, I wanted to be supporting the people that were supporting me and like were able to like make this a thing for me. So like any community event, anything I could do for my retailers, like I was there.
And what do you mean by that? Like, how did you support them? Like just showing up to their events or like donating product or?
Everything. I get a lot of requests for like donating product, which is great, and I love doing that. But I was such a yes man at the beginning. Like I said yes to everything. I remember getting an email being like, my daughter has like a soccer tournament this weekend. Do you mind coming to like set up like a full pop-up booth and just like handing out samples to the parents on like a Sunday?
Yeah.
I was like, yep.
I mean,
like I was there. And then,
yeah.
like for retailers, it was like standing in store on a Saturday for 5 hours, just like handing out samples. And honestly, it's such an important factor for a business like this. But it's also, as a business owner, one of the most like energy sucking things to be doing. Like it's tough to like
right.
stand there in front of people. It takes up a lot of your energy, and it's so important. But yeah, it's
Did you get any like good, interesting feedback from that? Like, were you able to get product insight or market insight from
absolutely
from doing that? Like, do you have any examples of that?
And it's so interesting because people always ask me, they're like, I kind of want to like skip the little guys and just go big. And I'm like, well, if I did that, I don't think I would still be here. Like those
right.
little guys is like why I was successful. Yeah, like it's just funny when people don't want to put in the time, like standing at a farmer's market, and it's like, well, that's your choice. But I think it's just so important for market research to be like one-on-one with your customers. And like, I mean, I did so many recipes that people hated.
Yeah.
And like, how would I have known that unless I was like standing there giving them samples? So honestly, those like first 6 months of business, just getting out there and like being in front of people and getting that feedback from people is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why a bite instead of a bar? Like how did that happen?
2 reasons. No one else was doing it. I mean, as I said, you walk into a grocery store and there's like bars everywhere. And I had so many people, and like my life would have been so much easier if I did a bar. I had so many people being like, why wouldn't you just do a bar? Like, in terms of production, like it's so easy. Like we physically hand rolled hundreds of thousands of bowls. It's insane. So that reason, and then secondly, it was, as I said, I was watching the food trends in Australia, and I saw these like energy bowls become such a big thing that I wanted to be one of the first people that like made that a thing here.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love the energy ball thing. I had one this morning.
Cool.
Not one of yours,
Yeah.
unfortunately. Well,
Yeah.
it might have been, but maybe I don't think so. But I love it. Like it's neat. It's quick. It's easy. It's accessible.
It's just like it's like an easy bite. I have nothing against bars. I mean, I think they're great too. I just think that it's like something fun and different.
I have some questions about scalability, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So how have you found it being like a female entrepreneur? Has that mattered?
It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you found any like mentors or support or obstacles because you were a solopreneur at the beginning?
In terms of obstacles, being a female, I know that everyone talks about it. I don't think I've ever felt that way. I think it's the complete opposite. I think in Calgary especially, people want to get behind female entrepreneurs, and there is so much support for us here. Like, it's absolutely insane. So me personally, that's never been an obstacle for me. Being solo, I wouldn't have it any other way. Yeah. That's just me. I mean, there are definitely times where I look at people who have business partners and I'm like, God, I wish I just had someone to like bounce ideas off or like tell me that my idea is a terrible idea. Because honestly, I have like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
I have nobody else telling me other ideas. But at the same time, I love the fact that this is like mine.
Yeah.
And every mistake I've made has been mine, and everything I've done successfully has been mine. And I'm also just terrible at like delegating to other people. Like, I'm a bit of a control freak, and so I guess I just kind of like that it's me. in terms of like mentors and stuff like that, I do. I'm like surrounded by amazing people. So
And how did you, I think something, and I'd love to hear the story, I think something that a lot of people grapple with when they first get into business is if they don't have business partners or venture capital or some sort of funding that comes with a lot of advice, how do you find the right mentors? How did you engage the right mentors? How have they helped you bridge that kind of bouncing ideas gap?
I surrounded myself by other small businesses, whether they were still small or like were bigger. So I have just like a community of people who are either like going through the same stuff I am and are there to just like be like, hey, you know what? I'm having a shitty day too, and like I get it because I'm going through it, which is so important because me being by myself can be very lonely, and you can really feel like I'm the only person in this world right now that's having this issue, and like I don't know what to do. So it's really important to have those people who are at the same journey as you are to just kind of be like, I'm here with you. But then I also have people who are further along, who are just kind of there to be like, you're killing it and you're doing great, and like, yeah, something might be going wrong right now, but you're gonna get through it.
Right.
I was fortunate enough though in 2017, I was a part of District Ventures, which is Arlene Dickinson's Accelerator program in Calgary. That like changed my business. Like I went into that as like a small guy having no idea what the hell I was doing, and like it was just like kind of still a bit of fun.
Yeah.
To coming out of it being like, I'm gonna fucking take over the world.
I can do this now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? How did you hear about that accelerator? How did you make the decision to get involved?
I had friends who had been through the cohort before me. And just speaking to them, they were like, it's fantastic, you should definitely do it. And then I think eventually they kind of reached out to me. It was a no-brainer though, because I was in a position of business where I was so ready to take the next step, but I had no idea what that next step was. So I knew that I needed some support to like get me there. So I did the first program in 2017. So basically it's a program where you have a bunch of mentorship and programming, and then at the end of the 6 months, you do a pitch to a room of 200 people. It's got investors and retailers and distributors and all the rest of it.
Right.
So I finished that and just like loved it and got such good feedback. And then moving forward, the Accelerator totally changed in that they now started investing in all of the companies. And I remember sitting down 2 months prior to that with the CFO, and I was like, you know, what kind of businesses are you looking at to go into this next round? And he was like, well, we're looking at businesses that are at this stage and making this revenue, and like I was nowhere close to that. So I was like, okay, cool, like good to know in the future.
Yeah.
And then after my pitch, they called me and they were like, we want you in the next Accelerator, which was super confusing because I was like, I'm not what you're looking for,
ready, yeah.
and I'm not ready. And we just had this conversation, and but yeah, they wanted me to come on board, and so I did. And so Arlene Dickinson and her fund now has equity, small equity in my company, and I did the program again and a pitch again, and that ended mid last year. And honestly, since then, it's just been like absolute madness.
Just craziness.
Just like crazy.
It's cool to have that support though, right? Because people like Arlene and her team, I mean, they have connections in ways that you probably wouldn't be able to establish yourself that fast. I think, again, it's one of those challenges that a lot of businesses look at. Like, crap, how do I get these mentors? How do I get these people? Mm-hmm. And so what I'm hearing from you is that you really just built true relationships, took one step at a time, and
you have to get out there. Like, you have to ask people questions. You have to not be afraid to like call someone and be like, hey, like I really look up to you and I'm having this problem, and like, would you mind grabbing a coffee with me and sitting down and like just chatting?
Did you find it was hard to be real with them? Like to there's someone that you admire or someone that you're hoping can help you in some way.
Yeah.
And then just letting them know, you know, I'm struggling in this way.
No, and I think the reason is because they were so real with me.
Yeah.
Like everyone that I've met with has been so open and honest about their journey that it's been really easy for me to be the same. I mean, there's always those people who you like meet with and you're just kind of like, I'm going to take everything you say with a grain of salt.
We're never talking about
it. Yeah. But no, honestly, like everyone with me has been like great. And I love now that, like, I mean, and I'm still a small business. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, but I love people now who are starting their own food businesses that they're like calling
Coming
me.
to you.
And I love it. Like, I have so much time for people like that because I know how important that was to me at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, again, doing the kind of local community thing, we talk with our clients about this, and obviously it's important. Once you try to move beyond that, beyond your capability to be at every soccer game, farmer's market, how did you kind of approach the brand piece? How did you try to build a brand around what you were doing beyond just you meeting face to face? How did that go for you?
That's honestly something I really struggle with. So all of my like social media and marketing, I do myself, and I love that everyone in Calgary who like follows me knows me and they know my story. They know the person behind the business, and I love that. But what I'm struggling with right now is that the company has grown beyond Calgary, and we're now in Vancouver and Toronto, and no one there knows who I am.
Right.
So I'm really struggling with the fact of like, how do I get my story out there to people who haven't known me since the farmers markets day?
Right.
What was the question?
Well, I mean, how have you transitioned? And I guess by the sounds of it, that's something you're
currently going through. Yeah.
So where do you think the biggest area of opportunity is for you there?
I think the next step for me is building a team.
Yeah.
Which is, like, as I said, like,
scary as hell.
It's scary as hell. And I mean, I used to have staff. So basically we used to make everything in Calgary. And so I had a team of like 5 people, and then I had like a marketing girl. Like I used to have people. And ever since we moved production outside of Calgary, I haven't needed that anymore. But I think the next step in order to like transition to that is just finding the right people to join my team, because yeah, it's gotten to the point now where you're right, like I physically can't be everywhere.
Right.
So I need to find those people who I can like trust to represent my brand and like be able to tell my story in a way that like I can. And it's impossible to find someone like as passionate about my business as I am. But someone who's like 50% passionate would be awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, now that you have outsourced production, obviously in the food business, and I don't know enough about it, but in the food business, I'm assuming there's a lot of regulation and all these different things. How did you go from, supervising production yourself with a few staff members or whatever to outsourcing it, and how has that looked?
I will say as well that was one of the toughest things I've done, because for the first 3 years of my business, I was in that kitchen every single day. Like that was my identity in the business. Like I would spend 12 to 15 hours there a day. So when I got to a point where I realized that like we just physically couldn't do it ourselves anymore, like it was at a point where it was like stressful. The staff didn't enjoy it, I didn't enjoy it. Like it was just at a point where it was like, I can't grow because of this. So I had to find a co-packer, which was like an 8-month process. I could not find a single one in North America that could take on my product for a couple of reasons. Okay. So a small business, I wasn't making the quantities that were high enough for a co-packer to take on. Like they're making product for huge companies, and my runs just weren't that big. And then my product is really tricky in that it was made by hand. No co-packer does that. Like everything's made by a machine, and mine is also vegan and gluten-free. So and it uses peanuts. And so there was like all of these different factors, and no co-packer in North America that I spoke to for like 6 months could do all of that.
So where did you go? What did you do? Okay.
So I was at a trade show in Vancouver this time last year. Just with basically like a table set up with distributors and stuff coming to talk to you, and a local person in Vancouver, her name's Catherine, she came up and was speaking to me and was asking me about my production, and I must have told her like that I was looking to outsource and all the rest of it, and she was like, yeah, like we'll do it. So she basically owns a co-packer in Burnaby, BC, that only deals with small businesses.
Oh, neat.
And it's all certified gluten-free, and it's like literally everything I needed. So she entered my life and just like changed everything. So I think that happened in February. By August, we had like fully transitioned over to that. Not without complications. And I was like told that by a mentor. They're like, I actually remember sitting down with her and I was talking to her about, I'm really terrified of like letting go of the reins on this, and like, this is what I've done for 3 years, and I won't be there every day to like oversee production, and I'm giving someone else my recipes, and like, I'm so terrified. But like, I know how great co-packing can be, and she had a business, and she was like, it will be the best thing that you've ever done.
Yeah.
And it truly was. But there's like, and she said to me, she's like, don't have the expectation that you're gonna give this person your product and everything's gonna be perfect, because it won't be. You're gonna have like a year of like things going wrong, and you're gonna have to, and it's so goddamn true.
Yeah.
Like there's been issues for sure, and we had to like change some of our product, which people weren't happy about, and yeah, it was just like a huge learning curve. But without it, I wouldn't have been able to like grow the business at all. And so I do have customers who are like saying to me like, you had to tweak this recipe, and like, this isn't the same anymore, and like, I can totally appreciate that, but you just can't keep everyone happy
all the time, right?
And you can't. And like, I try to explain to people that like, I wanted to grow this business to a point where they could buy it in every single store. Like, I wanted to do it for them, and I couldn't do that unless I made this step.
Right.
So they get it, I hope.
Cool. So I mean, as it doesn't sound like you have a ton of business or entrepreneurial experience prior to this.
Zero.
So what has that been like, going from passion project to this actually, holy shit, this is kind of working, to I have a real business and I have to actually manage it like a business? Have you gotten to that point where you're...
Yeah, and it's so interesting because most entrepreneurs are born entrepreneurs, and people say that to me all the time, like, you must be a born entrepreneur, and I don't know how to answer that, because I truly don't think I was. The thought had never entered my mind that I could like start my own business.
Right.
And yeah, like, I just, I'm kind of grateful for it, to be honest, because I feel like I get to learn so much, and I get to make mistakes and learn from it. And I've always said that like, with my next business, it'll be great because I won't have to go through all of that. But like, I don't regret anything that I've done, and I also don't regret how long it's taken me.
Right.
Like, this is like, I'm in my 4th year. Like, this hasn't happened overnight. And I've seen businesses like take off within like the first 6 months, and that's amazing. But for this business that I'm in now, like, I love how long it's taken me. I love how like slowly I'm getting to learn everything, because I feel like I'm now in a position with my business where I know every single aspect.
Yeah.
Like the back of my hand.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I mean, the actual like accounting and the actual business practices, have you found mentors in that area? Have you tried to learn a lot of that yourself? Kind of where did that go?
Accounting is like my least favorite thing in the world.
Right.
Numbers is like not my thing. So for the first 2 years, I did everything myself, but I now have a bookkeeper who's like taken over. And it's funny because I just started with him maybe like 2 months ago, and he like looked at my books and was just like, this is a mess.
We have to fix this.
And I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So like, in that respect, I did the best I could, but you know, your finances is so important with business, and especially after I took on an investor, I knew that that was something that I needed to like get in line. So I do have someone that takes care of that, but at the same time, I make sure that he explains everything to me, so I understand it myself.
So you get it, yeah. So I have a whole ton of questions about the future, but I think it's kind of unique because a lot of small businesses are thinking about, okay, I want to get investment, but I don't know how. How do I pitch? What do they want? What do they want to see? What do they bring to the table? What is, without sharing all the specifics of Arlene's firm, what has that experience been like? Was it hard to get them on board? What was due diligence like? And then what types of support, other than some financial injection, have they given?
I actually, taking on an investor was a terrifying thing for me. I don't know if I was actually ready for it. If I hadn't have been presented that opportunity, I don't think I would have like gone out seeking it.
And why is that?
I just think I knew I was in a position with business where I was like on the cusp of like big growth over the next year. And so for me, I was like, I don't want to give up a portion of my business when I know that it's worth nothing right now. And then in a year's time, it's going to be worth something. So that was really tough for me, but at the end of the day, the opportunity was like too good for me to pass up.
Yeah.
In terms of due diligence, holy crap, it was the worst. I mean, I was presented with a 40-page contract document, legal documents that I'd like never dealt with in my life.
Yeah.
And it was so overwhelming. I actually think that those 3 months where we were going through that was the most stressed I've been in my business. Because you get on, and I have a great lawyer, but you get on the phone with your lawyer and he's saying stuff to you that I have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I just have to trust that like they're giving me the best advice as possible. And my lawyer was actually very against me taking the investment. So there was a lot of back and forth between us until both parties got to a point where it was comfortable. I will say that without talking to people throughout that process, I would have gone crazy. Yeah. And luckily I was in District Ventures with like 5 other companies that were presented the same contract. So we all had each other to like talk through it. I also had 2 mentors that I like leaned on pretty heavily throughout that process. Because yeah, it's so overwhelming as a small business. Like you have these like CFOs and lawyers talking to you, and it's just like, it was so much bigger than what I was. So you just have to like surround yourself by people who, even if you don't know what they're talking about, you trust that they have your best interest at heart.
Yeah.
And that it's
So I
gonna
mean,
work out.
excuse me. So I mean, looking back now, it was terrifying. It was crazy. You were like, do I really want to do this and give my piece of my business away? How do you look back on it now? Would you have waited?
No, I don't think my business would still be here if I hadn't have taken it on.
If you hadn't received it?
Yeah, I definitely would have run out of money. Like it was such a blessing. Like as much as I didn't realize it at the time, it came at the exact right time. I don't think I realized how much my company was about to grow.
Yeah.
Like I just kind of thought it would take some time and it would still be like a slow growth, and it wasn't. Like it picked up really quickly, and without that investment, I don't think that I would still be running. And that's not just for like the money side of things.
Yeah.
That's for like that program is the only reason I have distributors. It's the only reason I have a broker. It's the only reason that I have like 600 retailers. Like I always say that I might have gotten there, but it would have taken me 5 years to get there.
Much longer.
Yeah. It would have taken me much longer. So I don't regret it at all. And as I said, like as much as I was terrified at that time and didn't feel like I was ready, I needed it.
So for people looking at potential investors and so on, what would you say, either in the food realm or otherwise, what would you say they should hope or at least look for in that process? What should they be looking for?
A lot of people, so I went straight to a VC. Like I had no prior investments, no prior loans, anything like that before this investment. So I took a pretty big leap from like having nothing to having a VC. So when a lot of people ask me about investors, it's kind of like, have you tried angel investing? Like, because have you tried like crowdfunding or anything like that? Because I feel like there's a lot less riskier options to take before you take the leap of having a VC. And then I always say to people, I'm like, if you only need like a little bit of cash to get you through, you probably know someone that will give it to you.
Right.
Like I never did that. I never like asked friends or family or anything like that. So I always kind of tell them like, that's an option. If you need like a considerable chunk of cash, then obviously you need to go a step higher. But yeah, like,
but when you go to a VC though, like I'm sure they're not all made the same. What would you be looking for by way of support? So let's say we've got the cash thing figured out. Is there, I mean, distribution, brokers, all of that other stuff, like was that part of the deal, or were you just looking for mentorship, or how does that?
That was all part of the deal, which I'm incredibly lucky to have an investor who's like in my industry, because a lot of the time they're not.
Right.
So I'm incredibly lucky that my investor has those contacts, and I would say that if someone's looking for an investor, to find someone that maybe doesn't have the contacts but like understands your industry.
Right.
For example, like I wouldn't go and get an investor who has no idea about like the CPG industry, or like has no interest in like what I do. Like it was super important for me to find someone that was like aligned and passionate about what I do, because for me it wasn't just about the cash. That was great, but I needed their support, and I needed to know that they were like actually backing me.
They actually gave a shit beyond just the investment.
Exactly, and not just my like brand, but like me as well. Like, did they believe in me, and did they feel like I had what it took to like make this successful?
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. I feel like we could go on for hours because I have a million questions.
I told you I talk a lot.
Right? You were worried about taking the whole hour. Couple quick things. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about the amazing stuff that's happened.
Yeah.
You know, the right timing, the luck, the stuff that has almost seemed to come together perfectly.
Yeah.
What has gone wrong? Like where have those? Because business isn't always that flowery,
God, no.
right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about it, maybe a couple of those big obstacles where you were like, this is an inflection point. Either I'm out or I'm so much further in. What did that look like?
So I'm literally in one right now. So as I said, my company grew a lot faster than I thought it would. And I wasn't set up to have the capacity to be able to like keep up. So basically this co-packer that I'm with now, we're making everything by hand. And I have like brokers getting me like all these new retailers. I have distributors ordering like huge POs. I have huge nationwide companies now ordering like big quantities from me. And that's great. And I'm receiving all of these orders and I have no product to give them. So I'm now in a position of like, I needed to scale up quickly and I needed to like find a solution quickly. And I knew what that solution was, but I wasn't ready for it for like another 6 months down the road. And then I was presented with this problem of, you need it now, you need it right now, and it's gonna cost you a lot of money, and like figure it out.
Right.
So I did. We've got this like machinery that just arrived in Vancouver last week, which will basically like take care of all production for us. But again, that was all exciting, and I got the loans for it and the machine was there. My POs are now like 2 months late, and like everyone is like calling me every day. It's like when you're letting other people down and when it's out of your control, it's the most gut-wrenching feeling. So anyway, this machine finally arrived in Vancouver last week, and I'm like, great, finally we can like get the product pumping again. And I was there while the technicians were setting it up, and this was a prototype, like made specifically for my product, and it didn't work.
Nice.
Yeah.
So now what?
So, yeah. So like Tuesday, literally 2 days ago, I remember being like, I'm so insanely happy, but I'm also so insanely on the verge of having a complete mental breakdown that like right now I either laugh or like someone's gonna have to like hold me in a corner. And when it's your business, you don't have a choice. You have to just like figure it out. So the technicians are still there and they're figuring it out. And I just got a video this morning of the machine like up and running and like everything looks great. But as I said, like when you go through these things, you don't have a choice.
Yeah. You just keep pushing forward.
You have to be a solutions-based person, because if you sit there, I mean, sure, I sit there for like an hour freaking out and I call people complaining and like, you know, all the rest of it. But then after that hour, it's like, okay, how am I going to fix this?
Yeah. So what have you said to those people that give you the POs and you can't fulfill them? Like, have some of them fallen off? Are you in jeopardy of losing some amazing accounts, or is it kind of?
I'm very lucky that I haven't. And there's nothing you can do but be completely transparent and completely honest, because I think if you lie to them and hide away from the fact that you're like going through some growing pains and all the rest of it, then they're not going to appreciate that. But I mean, I'm in contact with them all the time. I'm always touching base. I'm very transparent and just saying like, I'm so sorry and I'm doing everything I can, and you're a top priority, and like I really appreciate all your support. And I've been incredibly lucky that people understand when you're a small business, and I think that people have a lot of patience for it. Like, these people have been in the industry for a long time, and I'm not the first person that has like had this problem.
Tried to scale. And
so they get it. And like, you know, but as I said, like
it's stressful. Right?
It's so stressful. Like, but as I said, it's so important to like tell them that and to be honest. And it's like when I had to sit down last week and like send out all those emails being like, I can't get product to you just yet, was sickening. But all of the responses back were, great, keep us updated.
Yeah.
Like, it's, in your head, it's so much worse than it
actually is.
But
right.
that's just how it has to be. Like, unless you put that stress on yourself, you know, like, you're responsible for all of this.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty open about mental health and, you know, challenges and anxieties and of being an entrepreneur. But what are some things that you have done to stay sane throughout this process, to stay focused, to stay energetic and excited and passionate? What are some of your kind of tricks, or what do you do to stay?
I mean, when you own a small business, stress and anxiety is a very real thing.
Right.
And for me, and I'm still learning this, I feel like I've gotten a lot better in the past 6 months to a year. I used to be terrible at it, like to a point where it was crippling and I like couldn't get out of my car some days. But I think that I'm learning that I'm doing the best I can. I feel like there isn't a day that goes by where my day ends and I'm like, I could have done better. Like, I truly do feel like I'm doing everything I can. And in telling myself that when something goes wrong, it's just kind of like, yeah, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. And like, you're gonna get through it. And I've looked at all the mistakes I've made and all the hard times I've gone through in the past 5 years. And at the time, it seems like the worst thing, but things figure themselves out, things work themselves out, and that will continue to happen. And people believe in me, and I believe in myself, and I just like, you know, you just push through.
Keep going.
Yeah, cool. And I'm not saying that there's days, right? Like, there is definitely, like, I'm like a roller coaster every day. It's like, I will be insanely happy and like overwhelmed with joy if I get like have a good meeting or like a good phone call, and then I'll like check my emails and it'll be like disastrous. And it's literally just so up and down that you have to find this way. And actually this was a really great piece of advice that a mentor gave me. You have to find a way to like be in this middle ground and just be this really like humble, mellow person, so that when you receive bad news, you acknowledge it. You accept that like something's gone wrong and it's bad, but you can like pick yourself back up. And then when you receive really great news, you're not like in a position of being like too excited and like gloating and like, you know, so yeah, I'm trying to find this like middle ground of just being like, everything's going really well and I'm really proud of myself, and things are going to go up and down, and it's going to happen, and I'm going to have bad days, but yeah, it's just balance.
Cool. That's great advice. I've heard that once before, but I think it's so real when you see somebody going through that.
Yeah.
You know,
it's hard to practice as well. Like when you receive amazing news, I have like a small circle of people who I'll like celebrate that with, but I'm not on my like social media like telling the world, because I've also learned that never get excited about something until it's actually happening. Like, don't get ahead of yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's obviously a massive space for you to grow, and I think there's other brands that we've seen grow exceptionally large in that space. How do you see the future? What are your goals? What are you looking to do?
My goal from the very beginning was to create a product that was easily accessible for people. And I found myself in this really like niche space at the beginning, where it was very handcrafted and it was niche and it was only found at like organic grocery stores, and that was great and I loved it, but that's not like, I want to go beyond that. I want to make this a brand that is found at every major grocery store, and I want it to be like a household name, and I want people to know about it, because I believe so strongly that people need food like this in their lives. Like, there is so much noise out there, and it's really hard to sift through all that crap.
Right.
So I really, and like with the superfoods and stuff that I use, like I want those to be like everyday ingredients for people, and I want it to be used in a way that's not intimidating for them. Because I think for someone who doesn't necessarily like well and truly live like that healthy lifestyle, when I talk to them about like superfoods like maca powder and like mushrooms and all the rest of it, that can be so intimidating for people, because they're like, great, but like how do I like incorporate that into what I'm eating? So I really wanted to create a product that made that like easy and casual for people. Like, they're getting something that tastes great and it's like fueling them with energy, but it's also like amazing for their mind and their body. So that's kind of my dream. Like I want it to be, I want my product and I want similar products and other brands who like align with mine to take over the like Cliff Bars of the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So do you plan on expanding in products in your offering, or do you kind of want to go with the core products now, go as national or international as possible, and then
right now, like I was basically, it's hard in the grocery industry because they only have so much space on their shelf.
Right.
So if you have like 10 different flavors, they're going to take on 4 of them. So it's really hard for me to like rein in the creativity of creating recipes, because that's why I started it and that's what I love doing, and just kind of rolling out with like 5 solid flavors. Getting that out into the world, and then like after that, creating some more.
Once you have the leverage to say, hey, we need more space.
I have people ask me all the time, and like I want to so badly. I mean, I've had these 5 flavors for like the past 2 years, and so like I'm so ready for something new.
Yeah.
But probably not until like at the end of the year, I'd say.
Cool.
Yeah.
So just as we wrap this up, I'd love if you can boil down your best advice for people that have a business that are kind of wondering how to take those next steps. What would you say? What's your best go-to advice?
That's really tough. For me, oh God.
Nothing like putting you on the spot.
I know. For me, I would say just like stand behind your product. And if you're not truly passionate about what you're doing, and if you don't believe in what you're doing and you're not standing behind your brand, people will see that. So I think it's just really important to like, yeah, just like show like as much of your passion as you can. And I think that it's really interesting because some people are like, well, you're not your brand, your product is your brand. And I 100% agree with that. But I think that if people didn't know my story and didn't know who I was, they wouldn't be like backing it like they do. Like you walk into a grocery store and you see these brands and like you don't know who the hell started this and you don't know their story. Whereas if I see like a local product where I literally did farmers markets with them 4 years ago, I am always going to like choose their product over someone else's, because I know how passionate and I know how like hard they work for it. So yeah, that would be my piece of advice, is just like believe in what you do and just like run with it.
Or else do something else.
Or else do something else, yeah.
Right. And how can, if people want to follow you, I mean, you talked about social, how can they find you? Where can people find you?
Sure, so Instagram is probably like our biggest vehicle in terms of social media. So that is @LittleTucker_CAD for Canada. And then our website as well, you can order directly from our website. We also have like a full list of our retailers on our website. So if you're not in Calgary, if you're anywhere else in Canada, there is a retailer that you can go and buy it. Yeah, I'd say that's probably it.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Laura, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to see
I really appreciate it. It was fun.
And thanks a ton for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome.
Thank you.